Hey guys, in this video we are going to work on the form of updating the user profile, how to change the name and also the avatar image, and we are going also to work on the settings on changing the password, the email, and also deleting the account. So let's get started. We are going to create a file for the profile component. And we will start building this form. This form will be the content of the model we built already. As usual, we are going to create the dialog content and also the dialog text. This is the message will be shown to the user. And we will build a text field so the user can enter his name. It will be autofocus. The margin is normal. So we can get a good margin. Type is text. And we will pass the min length of this field to p2. Variant is standard. And the value, we need to create a state. But first, let's import the current user from use-auth, so we can use the display name of the user to be the default value of this text. Let's call our state name and set name. Set the value to be the current user display name. And now let's use this name here. If there is no value, we can just make it empty text. Better than null. We will make it required. And on change, we will set the state of the name to be this value. Let's work now on the avatar. We'll create a label. This HTML4 to connect this label to the input. So when we click on the avatar, that it would be also contained in this label. It will trigger this input and open the dialog of adding the images. The ID must be the same as this field. Type is file. And let's style it to be display none. So we only can see the avatar icon. On change, we will pass the handle change function. We will build it later. And this is the avatar will be shown. The source of this avatar would be the URL of the file. Let's style it, give it a width of 75 and height also the same. And to be pointer, so the user can understand that he can click on it. Let's add the dialog actions, and that's the submit button that we already built before as a component. And now let's add this source. We need to add a state for the URL. Let's import the objects and the functions that we need from the contexts in here. And now let's add our states. We need two states, one for file to contain the file, and other one for the URL that we are going to extract from this file. And we will set the default of this URL to be the one in the user object. It is current user.photo URL. Now let's work on the handle change. It will receive the action E. And we will create a variable or constant to contain the file the user has selected. Let's check if the file is there. We will set our state to this file, and we will set our photo URL to be the URL we are extracting from this file. Let's make the photo URL the source of the avatar now. And let's go now to the nav menu so we can open this profile form by opening the model and setting the content of that model to be the profile. So let's search for our profile. And here on a click, we will set the model to be open. The title to be update profile, and the content to be the component of profile. Let's import it. We don't need this image anymore. Let's check now. And it is here. Let's check if the image is working. It is here. Now let's work on the submitting. Let's build this function. I say sync function because it's going to wait for promises. And let's prevent the default so the page is not going to be refreshed. And we will set the loading to show the loading icon. And we will set it to false so we are not going to forget after that to disable the loading. In between them, we will create our functionality. We need two objects. One object is to set the current user in Firebase, and the other object is to set the images recorded in our Firebase store. Let's set the display name in user object to be the name, and let's set our uname. That's what we call this field inside our Firestore inside the images documents. It is uname, so we are going to set it also to the name of the user. And if the user selects also an image to update his profile, we are going to expand these objects to include the URL of that image after we upload it into our storage. So let's check if the user selected a file. We are going to make the image name a unique, so we are going to use uuid. It's not imported automatically, so let's import it manually. And we will add the extension to this unique name. This will give us the extension of the image. Now let's upload our image. Let's create a function inside Firebase to upload our image. We're not going to use the old one with the progress because we don't need the progress. Let's call it upload file. This will retain a promise because we are going to wait for other promises, and there may be also errors triggered. So we need to resolve or reject these promises or errors. This function will receive a file and the path of the file inside our storage. Let's create a reference for this file. These functions are imported from storage of Firebase, and this is our storage we exported in our config, and this is the file path we received. Let's upload the file and wait for that promise using our reference and the file itself. Now let's request the URL from Firebase. If everything goes well, we will resolve the promise and we will pass the URL. And if there is error happened, we will reject this promise and passing that error. Now let's use this function and pass it the file. This is the file from our state, and the path will be profile. This is a different subfolder in our storage beside our gallery. This is for only images of the users or the avatars, and it is profile, the ID of the user, and the name of the image. And if this image is uploaded successfully, we need to delete the previous image. We will do it later. For now, we will continue building our function so we can see that we can upload the profile of the user and see the change. Let's add this URL to the user object. And also to the image record. That's because we gave a different name in our images record than the names Firebase using for the user object. Now we will update the profile of the user using this function from Firebase, and we will pass the current user and the fields inside this object to be updated. That's the display name and the photo URL if there is URL, if the user decide to change his or her image. We need to reflect all of these changes in images, records or documents inside our store. This functionality we will do it later. Let's for now set a success alert that the profile has been updated successfully, and show that message even in the main page or in the model. I'll make it now in the model. And I'll make the timeout to be 3 seconds to show this message. But if you chose to make it in the main page, you have to close the model. And in case of error, let's show the message of error to the user. Let's give it 5 seconds, and we will console log this error to check the details of error as a developers. Let's check now. Let's change the name, add a new name because there is no name before, and update the profile image. Let's submit. And your profile has been updated, and then the image has been changed also. It's working. But as you can see, the information of the user haven't been reflected inside the images, documents or records. Let's start by this, how to delete the previous avatar or the photo of the user. We will check if the user object has an image URL. We will extract the name of that image. By splitting the parts of this link or URL. If we check this link inside our storage, this is how it looks. Let's open it in a new window so we can see it clearly. This is the link. It contains inside of it the ID of the user, starts from here and ends with %2f. Following that, the name of the image, and after the name of the image, a question mark. So now we can split this whole link first by the user ID and plus the %2f, and get the second part of that array, and after that we can split it again by the question mark and extract the first part of the array, and that would be the name of the image. So let's do that. Let's split first by current user ID. %2f, and we will get the second part of the array. So we will put here 1, and we will split again with a question mark, and we will get the first part, that's 0. This is the name of the image. We'll check again if there's an image name. We will try to delete it. This function we created already in our Firebase folder, so let's import it. And let's pass it the path of that image. In case of error, we will just console log the error. We don't want to stop our process because of this file. If the deleting of this file failed in case of Google, you logged on with Google and you already have an avatar in Google, we don't have it in our storage. So this function will trigger an error, and if there is an error, the whole process will fail. So that's why we put specific try and catch for this function inside our old try and catch. So this will not stop our process. Even if there is no file in there and this function didn't find that file, we will catch that error. It will trigger an error, and we will catch that error, and we will just console log that error. We will not stop our process of updating the new profile for the user. Let's try it now. Let's update the profile to another image. Submit. It's updated. Let's check if there is only one image and the old one. Yes, the old one has been deleted. It's only the last one, and that's it. Let's now update the documents or records of the images in the database to include this new information of the user. Let's create a new function. We will call it update user records. It will also retain a new promise because we are going to wait for many promises. Let's pass the resolve and reject. It is a sync function. And we will receive the collection name, the user ID, so we can query by that ID, and the object containing the fields that we are going to update. Let's create our query to bring all the records or the images that this user owned or added to our database. This query is function from Firestore, also the collection, and the database is the one, or the DB is the one we exported from config file. The collection name, the one we passed to this function, and here is the condition where user ID is equals to the one we passed to this function, which is the current user ID. Let's try and catch. We'll try to get all of these documents related to this user by passing this query. And we will create an array to include a promises to update all of these records. Let's loop through all of these documents. And with every document, we will push a promise to our array update promises. These promises will update the records of the images by adding the information of the user. This is the reference of the document inside the file store. And this is the object fields that we are going to update. Now let's wait for all promises to be resolved. If it is okay, we will resolve a success. And if there is an error, we will reject that error. Let's use this function. Update user records. Pass it the collection name, it is gallery. The user ID, current user ID, UID. And the object of the images. Let's check. As you can see here, still the old news. Let's update now and see if our information will be updated also. Let's make it 2. Submit. And here it is. It is updated the name and also the avatar. And in our database, we can see the record of the image. Here's the record of the image, and here is your name and your photo. Let's now work on settings. We're going to create this model content. Let's create a new folder. We'll call it settings. Inside it, we will call account settings, the component. And now let's create our dialog content. The content text. And let's add our actions. All of them will be buttons. First one, change password. We will create this function and we will pass it the action needs to be done. Let's copy this 2 times. One for change email and one for deleting account. Let's change also the actions. These actions we are going to pass it to the model of re-authentication, so we can recognize which action should be taken. Let's create this function to receive the action as a parameter. And now let's add it in our nav menu, in the settings button. Let's search for that menu item. Let's copy this and paste it here and change the title. And also the component that would be the content. It is our new component. Let's check if it is working. Let's click on settings, and it's working, but we need little styling to make them vertically aligned. Let's add the style here. Flex direction column. And the gap is 2. The vertical margin is 2. Let's check. And it is good now. Let's bring our current user state from our context. And also set model, set alert, because we are going to need them. Let's create this variable to check which provider we are going to use, and we will make a condition depending on this variable, or this will be boolean, it is true or false. We'll try to check if it is the provider is a password. In this case we will show the model re-authenticate, but in case if it is different provider for authentication, for example a Google, it is only a pop-up window, there is no need to enter a password. So we will just pass this step. We don't need to show the re-authenticate model, we will just show directly the changing the email and deleting the account. In case of the provider is not password, it is a Google, there is no need to show the button change password because there is no password. Let's add this condition for this button and let's check. Let's log out and check if it is disappeared when we log in with Google. And it is not here. Let's go back to our first account. Let's continue building our function. So let's check this condition again. If it's true, that means it is using password and email. We will just show the authenticate model to request the user to enter his or her password. Let's create this model and other models. Let's call it re-auth. And let's create the change password. change email, and delete the account. Let's start by re-authenticate. It is a form. With the dialog content of the model. The content text to ask the user to enter his or her password. And we are going to use here our custom field that we created before. We will pass it a reference here. Let's call it password ref. And let's pass it to the password field. Other props, ID and label will take the default values. Let's create the actions, and that is our submit button. Let's also add the submit function, handle submit function, because we are going to use the whole things. We are going to use them in the other models, change password, change email, and delete the account. So let's create and import our objects from the context. Let's import current user, set loading, set alert, set model, and the model. And also let's start creating our function handle submit, because we are going to copy all of this and use it in the other models. Let's add the prevent default, and also setting the loading and to be true, and make it disappear to set it to false. Let's use re-auth model here in our account settings. So we will set it as a content of the model. is open, is true, title re-login, and content to be our component re-auth. And let's pass it the prop action. We will need this action to check which action we should open the window for. Now let's work on the other authentication providers. If it is a Google, not by password and email. Let's make try and catch. And wait for a promise of re-authenticate with a pop-up. Let's pass it the current user with the new Google auth provider. If the re-authenticate is successful, let's check now the actions. Let's create a switch case and pass it the action. In case of a change email, we'll set the model to show the change email component. Let's copy set model in here. Because it is the same, we will just change some fields or properties. We will change the title to be update email. And the content to be our change email component. Let's build the models of change password, change email, and delete account now. Let's copy everything in the re-auth component because this is almost the same in change password, change email, and delete account. Let's paste it in the change password and let's make our changes here. Let's add another field for the confirm password. We need a reference for that also. Let's call it confirm password ref. And let's pass it here. The ID will make it confirm password. And the label confirm password as well. Let's update the message to be please enter your new password. Let's copy it again and paste it in change email component. Let's delete the field that we don't need. And change this reference to be email ref. Let's delete this and replace it by email field. And let's pass the props, the email reference, and the default value to be the email of the current user. And let's change the message as well. We don't need this. Let's copy this again and use it in the delete account. Let's delete the field because there is no field, only confirmation. We'll change the message. When we delete the user account, everything will be deleted. The files, I mean the images that user added, and also his profile image, and also his account. We will delete everything related to this user from the database, from the storage, and also from the authentication. Let's update the button because we will call it confirm. Variant contained. And we will use end icon to be send. We can use the action on a click also, but I preferred here to use the same theme to be on submit. Just delete the things that we don't need anymore. Let's go back to the account settings. And use these components. I think we forgot to change the components names. Let's go there and change them. This is the change email. Also the export here. password as well. And the delete account. Let's now use them. In case of change email, we will set the content to be change email. And we'll delete this prop. Let's copy this and use it for the delete account. Let's change here to be delete account. And let's change the title. And the component as well. And here let's catch the error and set the alert to show that error. We will show that error in the model. And in case there's typo or something in the action, we'll throw an error in the default case. So we will notice that there's something wrong. We forget here to add async because we used await. Let's copy the whole switch code and use it in re-auth. We'll use it here also when we check the action type. Let's add our code between set loading true and false. Let's create a credential. We'll create this credential from our current user and also the password that he is going to enter. And we will send these information or credentials to Firebase to re-authenticate and check if it is correct. We'll pass this function the current user and the credential we just created. In case of success, we will check our actions, which one we need to open now. Let's pass it here as a prop. And let's import all of these. And let's change this. And let's change this to be change password. Here it's imported. And this as well. Using this state, we will recognize which action the user has chosen, and we will redirect him to the right model. We forget here to change the email to password. Let's add also here console log error and copy it and use it in the re-auth. It's better here to extract the model props because it's more professional, so if there's another props that we forget about, it will be added here. But if you know that it can be also to just add is open true if you are sure that it is the only one left. But because of the model is already open, there's no need to open it again. We just need to extract the same properties and add the properties that we need to change only. Let's change them also here. And here. And here as well. Let's save and check. It's working. And it is redirecting us to the right model. When we choose to change the password, we go to the change password, and when we choose the email, we go to the email. Also, in case of delete account, let's check. Also, it's perfect. Let's try using the Google login. Let's go to the settings. Let's try changing email. We're directed to re-authenticate also, but this time with pop-up, not entering a password, and it is here, and the email also shown. Everything is working, but let's go back to our first account. Let's work now on submitting. So let's start by changing the password. Try and catch. Let's check if the password is not equals to the confirmed password. We will just throw an error. To show a user a message that the passwords don't match. But if there's no error and the passwords do match, we will send a request to Firebase to update the password of the user to this new value. This function receives the current user and the new password. And after this promise is resolved, we will close our model. And we will set the alert to be a success. And this time we will show it on the main page because we closed the model. Severity is success. Message: your password has been changed or updated. Timeout, let's give it 8 seconds. Location is made. And in case of error, let's paste the success message and update the fields or the properties. Let's decrease the timeout to be 5. And let's check. Let's go to settings, change password, enter our current password. And let's add our password here, the new one, confirm it. and submit. The password has been updated. Everything is working. Let's work on changing the email. Try and catch. And we will request updating the email to Firebase, passing the current user and the new email. And if the promise resolved successfully, we will copy the same alert and the same error handling in the change password. Let's change the message. And let's save and check. Let's re-authenticate. Here is our old email. Let's change it. Let's add one. Submit. We forgot to close our model. Let's add closing here. Set model to be the old properties and is open to false. Let's check again. Our email has been updated. Let's make it the old one. Everything is working. Let's now work on delete. Just delete these, we don't need them. Try and catch again. In this case, we need to delete all the files and the records of the user before we deleting the account. So let's create a function in our Firebase folder. Let's call it delete user files. This function will retain a promise. This function is async because we are going to wait for many promises. Let's add our query to bring all the records related to this user. We need to pass this collection name as a parameter here in our function, and also the current user object. Let's add where condition. The user ID or UID must equals our current user ID. Let's try and catch. And get a snapshot of all the records related to this user in our database. We'll use get docs and passing the query we just created. Now we need two arrays, one for store promises and one for storage promises. These arrays will store the promises to delete the records or documents from the database or the file store, and the other one will delete the files from our storage. So let's loop through our snapshot and pass the document one by one. Then we will push the delete document to our store promises. This delete document we created before as a function in our Firebase folder. We'll just pass it the collection name and the document ID. And let's push also to the storage promises the delete file. This also we already created it in our Firebase folder. And we will pass it the path of the file. The path of the file is gallery user ID and the image name. Image name, it is the document ID. Let's correct this typo. Now we will wait for all of these promises. First, we will wait to delete all the records or documents from our database. That's the store promises. And after that, we will wait for all promises to delete all the images from our storage related to this user. What's left now is to delete the photo of the user in the profile in our storage. So let's check if the user has already a photo URL. he has an image, let's extract the name of that image from the URL of that image as we did before. And also we are going to make here try and catch special one for deleting this image, because as we said before, that in case of Google, maybe there is an image in Google, there is URL for the user photo, but we don't have it in our storage, so this will trigger an error. We don't want it to stop our process. We will just console log that error and we will continue our process. That's why we added here try and catch especially for this case. And after we deleted everything, we will call this function inside our component delete account, and when all of these promises result correctly, we will delete our user from Firebase authentication. So if everything went well, we will resolve our promise and pass success to our delete account component, and in case of error we will reject and pass that error to our delete account component. Here we will call that function, and we will pass it gallery. This is the collection, the main collection, and our current user, and this function will do the job. And if all promises result correctly, we will delete our user. And in case of success, we'll close our model and show a success message in our main page. In case of error also, let's copy the message here. Let's update this message. To be your account has been deleted. Let's save and check. Let's go to settings, delete account, re-authenticate, and it's confirm, and boom, everything has been deleted and we are logged out also. Let's go to our database and check if there is still a record, and also to the storage there is nothing. The database after refreshing also nothing. Also in authentication that user has gone. Let's try it with Google as well. Let's log in with Google. Let's add some images. And let's delete our account from settings. Delete account. Let's re-authenticate. And let's confirm. It is gone. Re-authentication, it is to confirm that the user behind the screen is the real owner of this account. That's why Firebase required us to do this re-authentication, to make it more secure. In our next video, we are going to work on the user email verification, how to send a link to the user inbox to verify that this is a real email. And also we are going to work on forget password. When the user forget his or her password, how to send a link to their inbox so they can reset the password to new password. And also we are going to apply the rules on our storage and on our database as well, so we will make our website more secure. And we are going to hide our keys using environment variables and deploy our project into Firebase so anyone can access our link from anywhere.